What's he talking about? He's talking 2011?
Yeah,
Oh, you weren't invited because they were looking to replace everyone.
he was a city council member though.
Yeah. Oh, you were invited because they were looking to replace everyone. That's why you were invited.
But he doesn't know who else again.
You were. You were.
Was he at them?
Yeah, I think you. Yeah. Yeah, you were at. I think you went to one or two. I know you were there for sure. Because, yeah. What 6 month thing?
Real time.
Oh yeah. The accountability session. I remember that. Yeah, that was a great time. That was a great time for Seashell, wasn't it? All of that. Yeah, I don't care. It's still a great time for Seashell. Yeah. Okay, it's a little after 1 and we have the agenda in front of us. We don't have appointments, delegations, and declaration of conflict. At the beginning of every meeting goes without saying. Committee, I have an agenda in front of us for adoption with 5 items on, including minutes. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Seconder, Councillor Lutz. All in favor of adoption of the agenda as presented? Okay, thank you. Let's then go into the minutes 5.1 of Public Works, Parks and Environment Committee meeting of May 23rd, 2018.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Receipt seconder, the two of you were there, as well as myself. All in favor of receipt, thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, yes there is. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on item 6, new business, the report for the operating costs of the Water Resource Center. And I know there's nobody here from finance. Do we have any idea when that report is coming? And I guess if you just take that question away and let us know or let me know the answer, unless you know it.
Did you want to speak to that? Because you want to speak to that as well. You got the mic on, great. Because as you recall, last meeting I asked for an update as to when that would come forward and was told that it would be this meeting. So it's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have that by next meeting.
Okay, so it's coming in. Final touches. Okay, that's a good update because a number of us are looking forward to that. Any other business arising from those minutes? Okay, let's then go into 7.1, Engineering and Operations Services Overview and Activity Report.
I'll move receipt.
Thank you. Councillor Lutz, received for information. Mover, seconder. Looks like it's going to be the two of you today. Seconder, Councillor Wright. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Any questions on the information contained therein? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on page 9, under the Dusty Road reroute raw sewage, this is the sloughing into the lagoon. It says here that that's going to be a daily task. Could somebody just explain to me exactly what the daily task is? And I have another question after that, okay? Sorry.
Yeah, basically we've lost one of our lagoons at Dusty Road because of the sloughing of the dried sludge that we gave to Salish Soils. The rain fell on it and it slid into the lagoon and filled up the lagoon, making it, rendering it useless to us. They have begun removing the sludge from the lagoon. There's also a lot of reeds and vegetation that has grown on top of it now. So they're being careful not to tear the liner in the lagoon, but they have to remove this sludge slowly, and they're going to incorporate it with the dried sludge that we give them. So currently we are pumping on a daily basis across the road from the aerated lagoon to the racetrack, which is another tank, and eventually it makes its way down to the WRC.
Thank you. So this is Salish Soils that's doing this work. It's not our staff. Is that correct?
Yes, they're removing the sludge from the lagoon, but we, the staff, are pumping the sewage across the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just a continuing line of questions that we've had on this issue over the last little while. Councillor Lutz?
Page 7. I wonder if I could have an update on the abandoned boat projects.
So John, obviously you and your staff, yourself and a couple of others have been very involved in this and identifying the boats originally, and we've received some funding, so.
Yes,
please.
we received $70,000 funding for, the word just went that way, do an appraisal of the vessels. I went out and I've rented a boat, and I went out and I did the exact GPS locations for them, which they require. And now, of course, they move, they see you out there. And so far I've spent probably about $3,000 to $4,000 of the funding. In the process right now of I have to go back out, and then I have to assess each vessel. I mean, I have ability to do a certain part of it, but I need a person that I'm going to have to hire to come with me that knows exactly what the cost of disposing these vessels are. We have sunken ones, we have ones on the surface, so if you got a 25-foot fiberglass boat that still has a motor in it, he can say, well, this is going to be X amount of dollars on this boat. Once that is all done, it's not completed yet, then that gets sent back to Ottawa. And then Ottawa is going to say, okay, you have X amount of dollars, you can get rid of these 3 boats or 4 boats. So I'm hoping to maintain a lot of the money, the $70,000 that's for the assessments. I don't think it's going to be very expensive. So I'm hoping to say to Ottawa, okay, I spent $30,000, I have $40,000 left over. Can I put that towards disposal of another boat or 2? Is what I'm hoping to do. So that's where we're at right now. It's long and drawn out. You're dealing with many government agencies. Also with the rules and stipulations that people think, hey, I can just drop an anchor out there. Well, it's not. It's against the law. And I'm trying to educate the public on this while I'm down there, because the surface of the water is federal. It's navigable waters. The seabed is provincial. So if you're putting a permanent anchor down, you need written permission from provincial authority. Then you need written permission from federal authority that you're not a hazard. So, and obviously nobody's doing that, right? So you think you got your right, well, I should be able to go out there and say, get your boat out of here. Well, I can't, because it's not our waters. So I'm dealing with the Coast Guard on that issue right now, trying to get rid of some boats. And actually they've been very, very good. And if oil slicks get reported, I call the sergeant over in Stevenson. And if you ever see the bright red plane going by, that's them taking pictures. They dispatch it. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Councillor Lutz?
There was talk about posting on the existing vessels that they had to remove them. Is that being done, and to what effect?
What's happening is vessels that I know the owners of, and some of those boats out there are owned, people have taken ownership of them, but when I've gone through the registry, it's somebody in Richmond that is registered to. So there's 2 ways. I can go to the person and say, here's a form that I have that they can sign the boat over to me. Great, I can get rid of it now. The boats that are unknown, so I have a sunken sailboat. I still have to get a diver to go down, see if there's numbers on it, serial numbers, trace it, and if I don't find an owner, then for each boat that owner is unknown has to be posted 3 weeks straight in the paper before I can touch it or do anything to it. It's quite laborious. So you got to follow the rules. If not, I could get my hand slapped, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
So John, just stay there for a second if you can. Thank you. I'm wondering, first of all, I was interested that when you move around, they move. I guess you should stay out there longer. Maybe they'll move further away, although that's somebody else's problem then, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's still the
I don't
problem.
like passing the buck. I want to take care of the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's all through the inlet.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, down at Tawanik and
Yeah.
stuff, off the island.
that's where they'll go, right? Within our
It's a
own
shame.
waters. Yeah.
You know,
Okay, so do you know how many boats you believe you'll identify? And obviously, as we've talked about it through the committee that we formed with the she shells, we've concerned that there's a number of them and it will take a number of years to deal with them. And hopefully people are getting the message as we're dealing with them to not add more boats to our waters. And
At the start, I identified 19 boats.
19.
I got funding for 14 to do the assessment on. And I think what's going to happen is that once we get to this towards late summer, early fall, when I actually have some paperwork where I can go plucking some boats, I think it's going to be a bit of a snowball effect. I think some people are going to panic that are out there and some are going to run away.
Okay.
And there's talk of that already. But then for one that goes away, I got 2 that come in.
Okay.
You know, so I think once we show up with the barge and the crane, we got funding to get rid of X amount of boats, I think you'll see some of them leave.
They're
But where
just
they're going to
moving
go
somewhere
down
else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They're going to
just
be somebody
outside.
else's problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's mine and our responsibility because it's our waters, right, to keep it
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
And I just don't want mayor and council all of a sudden get phone calls from somebody else saying, hey, you just threw your problem down to me,
Yeah.
because you know that'll happen.
Yeah, and it's a lot like air pollution. It's the water pollution will move, right? So just like air will. with
Yeah, they're
pollution.
killing the
Yeah.
bay, right?
Yeah.
Where is all the sewer going? How much diesel and gas? What else is being thrown overboard?
The final question I would ask you, John, is do you know how many of the vessels that you've identified are close into shore, i.e., how many of those vessels are putting cover over and/or darkness over the fragile ecosystem that I've mentioned more recently about grasses and that are being more affected by those in shallow waters? I'm assuming there's not too many in that situation.
No, I wouldn't say there's a whole lot. No, because most ones out there are on a swing anyway. They're not completely stable over one area.
Yeah.
No, the only ones that I see are affecting stuff like that are the ones that sank.
Oh, so they're on the seabed then.
They're on the seabed.
Okay. So they're not just shadowing the grass, they're on top of it.
Sitting on top of it.
Okay, which is an issue as well, but it's, yeah,
And that's the ones I really want to get rid of first,
okay.
you know.
That are in the water actually polluting through
Exactly, get rid of
degradation and
those.
such.
I mean, the ones on the surface are an eyesore. And, you know, if I can get rid of the ones underwater, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Then if I can get rid of a couple on the surface, it's a start.
Yeah, and hopefully we can keep getting funding for that. Okay, thanks for your efforts on that. It's really important. And do we have any more questions on the report that's in front of us, committee? No? Okay. Thanks again, staff, for answering those questions. Let's then move on to 7.2, and I think that's an issue why Mr. Prudent is here as well. And I thank him and his group for all their work as we look to help them solve some of the issues with ongoing maintenance.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt, thank you. Second, all in favor of receipt of this report? Thank you. Everyone's in favor. Now, there's a extensive report in front of us. Do we have any questions of Perry on this particular issue? Perry's sitting where he is, he said, because he wanted to answer any questions. Yeah, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On recommendation 1.2, I presume you've got $10,000 in your budget that you can shuffle around for 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's identified further down in the report that we would reallocate the money that we were going to spend replacing the surround on the playground at Kinnickinnic Park towards the necessary safety improvements that should be done this year at the marsh.
All right, thank you.
The which?
At the Seashell Marsh. So it's going to go from the surround at the Kinnickinnic Playground. We're going to reallocate the funding that we're going to use to replace the surround at the Kinnickinnic Playground. We're going to reallocate that to deal with some of the safety improvements that need to be done this year at the Seashell Marsh. They're listed specifically in the immediate safety issues addressed by the society, which includes replacement of the fence and a section of retaining wall, and then adding some split rail fencing along a pathway that when the waters actually flood the pathways, that it causes a safety hazard to some of the pedestrians using the trail.
Okay, so you have to find the money somewhere. Councillor Lutz?
I see that the lease is up next year. Us taking on this maintenance, does that remove the need for a lease to the society? Or will that be renewed but read differently?
Yeah, my thought was that that would be negotiated next year when the lease expires, but I'm hoping that the society stays on as the leaseholder and that their main focus shifts to providing education and stewardship and preservation of the marsh, and that Seashell Parks would take over the maintenance. We've been assisting the Sunshine Coast Natural History Society over the last number of years with basic maintenance, but what's happened there is that there's been a lot of erosion and other safety issues that are identified in this report that is beyond the Natural History Society's capabilities. So we would take over full maintenance of the park, and I, as the parks manager, would supervise and direct any of the improvements over the number of years in collaboration with the Natural History Society.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the Natural History Society, they're all volunteers. Is that correct?
Yes, they
And
are.
in essence, their budget is probably about $500 a year, which is something that they get from the District of Seashell
Yeah.
to maintain and manage an asset that we, in essence, own. Is that correct?
That's mostly correct. They have also managed to get some grant funding, and
Yeah.
hopefully they can continue as a society to try to get some grant funding to assist with the financial component of some of the upgrades. I've given a brief description of the upgrades, but I really think the Seashell Marsh is a jewel, and it really needs a lot of work. There's tree work, there's invasives, there's pathway erosion. The list is fairly long. After they approached us and said that they were finding it difficult to keep up and that they were looking for our help, we actually did a fairly extensive site visit last month with Director Pruden and identified the main concerns. But in the future, because of the erosion, there's also probably going to be some need for some dredging around the islands, or there won't be any islands anymore.
I'll move recommendation
Do you have a question first before that?
No.
No? Okay,
1.2
One
and
and- okay.
1.3.
okay.
And I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion on those items? Councillor Lutz?
I'm curious as to what will happen dealing with trying to stop the paths from eroding. Will it change the atmosphere or environment of the marsh in any way that might be detrimental, or is that something you'll do some research to protect the wildlife?
Well, we'll be working with the Sunshine Coast Natural History Society to make sure that we keep the integrity of the marsh. But I think the improvements that we're looking to do will actually enhance the marsh and make it more user-friendly and beautiful, more beautiful as well. If you look at some of the retaining walls that the Sunshine Coast Natural History Society got grant funding for in past years and have done, we're looking at just extending that. If I'm not sure if anybody had a chance to tour the marsh in the last year or so, but there's when you first enter on the Porpoise Bay side of the marsh, you'll see some retaining wall, and then as you go further on, there's another section that's really just a lookout. And my vision is to connect those up on the entire east side, and that will give stability for the walking path, prevent further erosion, which is mostly being caused by the waterfowl themselves, and then as you go around the marsh, there's more retaining walls that are needed around the bench area, and there's also some additional riprap along the west side. But what we'd be looking at doing this year is the immediate safety concern, which is extending that one area on the east side another 20 meters, and then working in the future to continue with that theme. And over the course of 5-6 years, it would start to look really good.
Okay, any other questions? It's been introduced. 1.2, 1.3, all in favor? Thank you. Thanks, Perry, for your work on that and reacting very quickly to some concerns provided to us by a volunteer organization. Thanks. 7.3. Thank you. Okay, yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's only two of you today. You're next. So we have all in favor of receipt of that information, and we have a staff member here to answer any questions on that. Any questions from committee members? Councillor Lutz?
I just want to say thank you for the report. We all knew people were speeding, but wow, I didn't know 3 times the speed limit. That's quite amazing. And I hope that with the attention of the RCMP, that maybe we can deal with it.
Any other comments? I'm surprised that I was wondering about Mason, and because you've identified one road and then the next road, and Mason, you're obviously reacting to, as you indicated in your report, to complaints we've received, but Mason, I hear about it all the time from a couple of individuals, and just because it's a drag strip, so, and some people paved it, so that doesn't necessarily help. Serge?
Yeah, we are maintaining a list of roads that have been identified as problems, and we're going to be moving it around the city over the next several months.
Okay.
So it's one that's been brought into our attention recently by a developer, mentioned it a while ago.
Mason?
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be up there then?
It's on the list.
It's on the list. Okay, so it'll be there in the next few months on Mason then.
Within the next few months.
Great, great. I hope you mean 3 when you say a few. And there's obviously other roads, but I keep hearing about that one. And anybody that's lived in Sechelt for a number of years knows what people are doing on Mason, because it's straight, it's open. It's basically, like a 2 to 3 mile drag strip up there. So hopefully you get there quick to do some study of the area. Lots of animals. There's a lot of interplay between animals and humans, and lots of cars too. So lots of potential calamity up there. Any other questions? Thanks for doing that, and I'm happy to see that piece of equipment move around the district to give us some more results. Any other questions? Okay, great. Let's move on to 7.4, Sandy Hook Road drainage improvements.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, all in favor of receipt? Great. Any other questions on this? It's quite a substantive change from the original budgeted amount and to what needs to be done or is hoped to be done. So any questions from committee members? Councillor Lutz?
When you talk about, in the report, areas that have been loaded with pea gravel to give more parking, is there any way those costs can be borne by the homeowner that has clogged the ditch?
Thank you for asking that question. Yes, we could, but this is historical. They put a pipe and they put a pea gravel, the pipe broke, and that area is not now functioning. So yes, according to the bylaws, we could ask no parking and remove those things, and that's a huge cost associated. If they want to parking, we realize that the parking is necessity because of the hill grade for the driveways. During winter time, it's difficult to go up. That's the reason they're putting on that. So there's 2 components here. One is the mandatory portion, and that is nothing to do with the pea gravel. The second part is the optional items. The optional item is the parking one. So regardless of the optional, we have to address that in mandatory section.
Any other questions on the information presented and the larger budgetary potential request coming up? Okay, seeing none, we will move forward. Obviously, that's where that will go, to go into our budget considerations. Okay, we'll wait till it comes there for further discussion then. We're at the end of the agenda items, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Wright. I'm just assuming that's you. Okay, great. All in favor of adjournment? Thank you. Any questions of those that are present? Nope, none. It's fairly self-explanatory. I'm hoping